Welcome to Coastal Review Podcast.
Conference, also known as CPAC, is underway in Florida this weekend. The annual gathering of conservatives will be the first time we hear from former President Trump since he left office. He will deliver a speech on Sunday. The conference comes at a time of great divide in the Republican Party as members try to determine its future. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News political reporter Adam Brewster. Hi, Adam. Great to see you. So tell us what we've seen so far from the beginning of the conference today.
One of the things that we've seen talked about, by several speakers in a panel is sort of the effects that COVID-19 has had on the conference and then, on Americans around the country. There were references to the fact that they were able to move the event to Florida because of the way that Governor Ron DeSantis has handled the virus. And there have been, many criticisms of actions that governors in other states have taken that have been more strict in terms of the lockdowns that they were required and the restrictions that have been placed on businesses throughout the pandemic. That's something that we've seen brought up, and we'll certainly see people probably acknowledge it at least once in their remarks as they go through. We've also seen some talk, about reforming election laws. There are many panels that are scheduled throughout the weekend to discuss what Republicans think went wrong within the 2020 election. Of course, that goes, against, many against, what we've seen in terms of there being, not evidence of widespread fraud to overturn the election. And we'll also see throughout the weekend many potential 2024 presidential candidates be speaking. We've seen already Texas.
Did you order the murder of Jamal Khashoggi?
Absolutely not. This was a heinous crime. But I take full responsibility as a leader in Saudi Arabia, especially since it was committed by individuals.
The Saudi consulate in Turkey. The Biden administration is set to release a new intelligence report on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The Washington Post contributor was killed in 2018 at the Saudi consulate in Turkey. He was considered a prominent journalist and a fierce critic of the kingdom. However, it's unclear if President Biden addressed this new report during his high-stakes phone call with Saudi King Salman yesterday. So for more on this, let's bring in CBS News senior foreign affairs correspondent and Face the Nation moderator, Margaret Brennan. She's joining us from Washington. So, Margaret, what are your sources telling you about that phone call and this report? What new information could we learn? Because the CIA has pretty much already publicly blamed the Crown Prince for orchestrating Khashoggi's murder.
That's right. Well, this phone call between King Salman, the 85-year-old monarch ruling the kingdom, and President Biden had to happen. This is a key relationship, and there are a lot of issues they discussed in the region, including the threat posed by Iran. One of the most uncomfortable things, of course, whenever dealing with Saudi Arabia is addressing human rights abuses, particularly when it comes to the king's own son, the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who also serves as the defense minister. So for the Biden administration, they are trying to navigate this in a way that doesn't completely rupture and disrupt the relationship with the monarchy, because there are important intelligence sharing aspects to this relationship and geostrategic aspects. Also, keep in mind, if the king passes away tomorrow, it is MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, who will be ruler of that kingdom and an American ally. So the Biden administration has to figure out how to navigate this diplomatic situation they find themselves in, because during the campaign, then candidate Biden said he would hold Saudi Arabia accountable. The director of national intelligence, Avril Haines, when she was confirmed, promised Congress she would declassify some of this information. So when this report is released, and we expect it to be imminent, it will lay out in stark terms that the United States has assessed that the Crown Prince approved the murder. And so once that report is out there, It's going to be impossible to deny. It's going to be difficult for the Biden administration to completely keep at bay calls to sanction the Crown Prince, but it's also, frankly, unrealistic to expect that they would do something like that because of the key alliance between the two countries.
Margaret, you raise an interesting point, the conundrum that President Biden finds himself in. You recall a couple of weeks ago when the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, was asked about the relationship that President Biden would have potentially with MBS. Jen Psaki replied, I'm paraphrasing here, that the president's counterpart is not the Crown Prince, it's the King of Saudi Arabia. But you also raised the notion, of course, that should something happen to the king, the Crown Prince right now is heir apparent. So how does the Biden administration navigate that very tricky diplomacy?
Right. Saying we won't deal with him doesn't last very long with the 85-year-old monarch. And by the way, the defense secretary, retired General Lloyd Austin, has had to speak to Mohammed bin Salman because he is the sitting defense minister in a war that the U.S. is trying to, deeply involved in overseeing a war the U.S. is trying to end in Yemen. So Mohammed bin Salman is problematic for the United States currently on a few fronts, including the war in Yemen that he has been overseeing there, that the U.S. now says is putting arms shipments on hold as it reviews its policy there. So there is a little bit of a maneuvering of the chessboard here. But the bottom line is that the royal family is not expected to chain the line of succession just to keep America happy. Mohammed bin Salman is a crown prince. And he will remain so. But it was also going to be put in stark terms that he was directly involved in approving this, and thus are arguably part of a human rights abuse endorsement, since he himself, though he denies playing a role, will be proven by U.S. intelligence to have known about it. So you will have the Biden administration in the coming days make some announcements to look like they are responding by saying that they take threats against U.S. journalists very seriously. And I would expect a new policy to be announced from the State Department on that front.
Margaret, switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about what we've actually sort of started the show talking about, these airstrikes launched in Syria. The target was Iranian-backed militias rather. So what can you tell us about the location and the target?
This was the first military strike ordered by the new commander-in-chief, President Biden, and he picked it deliberately in a way that allows him to avoid escalating tension with Iran. Look, this is to respond to the rocket attacks that put U.S. personnel at risk last week in northern Iraq. And those attacks, according to the United States, were carried out by Iranian-enabled, in the words of David Martin, militias. In other words, they were given the weapons by Iran, but they weren't directed by the country of Iran. These are some of the proxy forces that Iran uses in the region to carry out some of their dirty work and their interests. So the bottom line is President Biden is trying to do three things. One, keep his diplomatic lines open so that he can hopefully return to the negotiating table on the nuclear front. That offer was made last week. They don't want Iran to walk away. They also offered to talk about hostages. There are 4 to 5 Americans being held in Iranian captivity right now that the United States made an offer to begin talking about. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, told me that last Sunday on Face the Nation. And 3, they want to send a message that, look, we do want to talk to you, but you can't cross this red line. Don't